just a few minutes ago when we were talking about body cameras, we talked about dignity, privacy, search warrants. If we're going to go into a house to look for drugs, we don't just barge in there unless there's exigent circumstances. We get a warrant. And it seems to me that this really violates people's rights, even if they're tax delinquent. Giving them free hand to be able to go in to check for pollution and environmental standards seems to be far-reaching.
Good morning and welcome back to Talkin' Racine. This is episode number 135, and today we have Mr. George Myers, Mr. Jim Spodek, and myself, Dr. Ken Jorgen, the usual crew. We're going to talk about several things this morning, and the very first thing we want to talk about is openness and transparency, something that Mayor Mason has touted as being primary features in his administration, and we've found out that, well, not so much.
No, we remember when the ordinances got changed a while back? It used to be easy to get things in front of the council and get into the committee and get it discussed. Well, we had one of the people we talked about.
Jerry Hoyman.
We get to start off with a video of me, which is,
and this guy's a good citizen, and he's been trying to get some information out of the city, and he's tried to contact Mayor Mason repeatedly. And we're going to show a little clip.
Well, first is the way it used to be.
Yep, exactly. We're going to show how the procedure was before Jerry Hoyman. We used him as the example.
I'm on the video, Doc. You'll recognize
that's right. Yeah, we got a little. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right,
we got a clip of George. First.
Every once in a while, I get a video of me, man.
It was
a communication from Jerry Hoyman. He was just a citizen of Racine. He was concerned about the grass cutting in some of the city lots. And so he wrote a letter to the Common Council. The city clerk read it. All right. It went to the Common Council where it was read. It went to committee, and it went back to the Common Council, and it was all handled in less than a month. This cumbersome process handled Jerry Hoyman's question in less than a month, and it was very smooth. And Jerry Hoyman is just an average, everyday citizen.
There will be 8.
The point was that it used to be very simple. Jerry Hoyman just wrote a letter, gets right to committee, no discussion, gets to committee, and then the committee discusses it and sends it back to the council for approval. Now, this is the same Jerry Hoyman that I talked about on that other video with the new system. Now, follow what he went through trying to get something done now.
And all he wanted was information about the agreements and the policy between the city and the quarry out on 4 Mile Road.
3 Mile Road.
3 Mile. Well, it is 3 Mile Road, but it's
this is a new simplified system at work.
Speakers this evening. First is Jerry Hoyman at 3900 Wilshire Drive.
I served our country in the U.S. Army during combat, working in intelligence. I served so that all of us would be heard and respected by our government, whether local or national. Recently, I found out that may not be true. I live by the recently expanded Payne and Dolan Quarry. Then I tried many times to set up a meeting with Mayor Mason. That, after many attempts, was unsuccessful. But I was told by Mayor Mason's executive assistant that I would get a letter. The letter is dated May 7th, 2019. I received it via the U.S. Postal Service on May 17th. I don't know why it took 10 days, but that's what happened. On May 23rd, I met Mayor Mason at an aldermanic listening session at Chavez. Attached to the May 7, 2019 letter was a June 22nd, 2018 city's comprehensive plan for the quarry. At that May 23rd meeting, I asked Mayor Mason, did Caledonia accept all of the terms listed? Mayor Mason asked me to send him an email, and he would respond and let me know which terms Caledonia accepted. On May 27th, I sent the email to Mayor Mason asking what Caledonia had accepted. June 17th, I went to Mayor Mason's office and talked to the administrative assistant. I take that back. By June 8th, I sent a follow-up email because I received nothing back. On June 17th, I went to Mayor Mason's office and talked to the administrative assistant because of no promised reply. On June 19th, I again went to Mayor Mason's office and I had gotten no response back. On June 20th, 2019, I received a call from Mayor Mason's executive assistant. I asked her if the mayor was busy with photo ops regarding the hotel, etc., to just provide me a date that I would receive a response that was told I would on May 23rd, 2019. On June 24th, I sent a follow-up email reminding I need a reply. I received no response. On July 1st, I visited Mayor Mason's office and mentioned if I did not receive a date or the promised information in the month of July, I would make this presentation. So I'm just asking Mayor Mason, to please respond to what he promised to me on May 23rd, 2019 at Chavez. As a taxpayer and military veteran, to receive what was promised to me by you on May 23rd, 2019. I was brought up that if people tell you something, they promise something.
Sir, your time has expired. Please conclude your remarks.
There it is. There's a new improved system.
Oh, and what a great example of openness
Poor
and
Jerry.
transparency.
Yeah, I know.
Jerry.
Yeah.
He doesn't fit the system
He
anymore.
doesn't understand the new way of doing things. You only need 250 people, and then you can get done
Yeah.
what you did before all by yourself.
And maybe.
Yeah, really
man.
streamlined it, huh?
Yeah,
So,
okay.
let's see, you got it within 30 days at that other request about the grass cutting.
Yeah, got
And it was
to the
discussed.
committee.
And it was discussed.
Now it's been over 2 months and nothing.
Nothing, and it's not going to be discussed. Here's the thing. It only is what is the agenda of the city administration is what gets through. It's not about, open and honest and government any longer, or I can have a representative government. It's now.
They don't even try. They talk a good game, but
They don't even come close
If it's
to it.
uncomfortable to deal with,
Yeah,
let's just put the guy
absolutely.
off and let him
Right.
run around for a while. Maybe he'll get tired and quit.
Well, that's exactly what they hope to. But again, if you have something that the administration wants, that's pushed straight on through, no problem. Or one of the aldermen, one of the special aldermen, because the other aldermen really have very little say any longer. The aldermen are really. They're just button pushers now. I mean, there's really no connection to the administration controls it all.
If they want
And
to
there's
feel
a typical
powerful, just
example.
vote with the mayor.
Exactly. Vote with the mayor, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah, and then you'll feel good. But don't try to do it on your own because you're going to get disappointed.
Yeah. Have either of you guys got delinquent taxes? I don't.
Oh boy, yeah, that came up later in the same meeting,
It's
wasn't it?
that memorandum of understanding that between the county and the city, which empowers the RDA, which is
A non-elected board.
a non-elected board, to go into your home or your business
Right.
if you're delinquent in your taxes by as little as 8 months.
8 months.
Yeah.
Really, they said 3 years.
I mean, they say, well, that we would never do that. Well,
Right.
why do you need the power then? I mean, let's be honest. We don't trust you with that kind of power.
Right. And you're giving it to a non-elected board that the citizens really have no connection to.
Right.
And when they talk about 3 years, George, you can explain the tax certificate, and then we can kind of
You want me to go through the tax certificate?
Well, you know what? Let's
Yeah,
play
just
this
go for it.
first.
I'll play a little bit. No, understand, we're talking about a tax certificate. This is a little letter you get from the county treasurer that there's something due on your taxes. Let's just start with that, and then we'll talk more about our work. But that's all a
The
tax certificate.
second whereas states that any tax delinquent property is subject to being entered. Does that legally mean really any, or is there an exception to this any? If the city attorney could address that, please.
Now, this is the first, we had discussed this very thing. We had, that's exactly what it says, and it still says it today, even after this meeting, that any property is subject to this. And remember, the Journal Times came up with a story saying that only applied to commercial and industrial. And then we pointed out, after that story came out, that no, that might be what the Journal Times printed, but the actual document says that it's
Any real property.
and here we are, even after our show now, Henry Perez is bringing up this thing at the city council. And Henry, by the way, I'd like to just put this little part in. Henry played a very, I want to use the term heroic because it was. It was a great role that he played here. This thing was going through the council with virtually no vote. I mean, you know, it was on the nobody
It was on a
separated
fast
it
track.
out. It was on the fast track, just going to go through without discussion. And when it came up to you know, getting towards the vote on it, which they would have voted for this and 12 other items, all in the same vote. All right, he wanted to get it separated out, and he started off with this, saying, "Is this what it's? I think it says it's any property and not just commercial and industrial." And that's what
His
this was about.
rationale for it was spot on.
It was really- it's
He
very
talked
good.
about your constitutional rights.
So the agreement doesn't say the city can enter any tax delinquent property. It just says, look, there's a statute here that allows the county to enter tax delinquent properties. But the resolution is actually what is the agreement or the permission granted to the RDA.
Did you notice the big pause there? The power is granted to the RDA.
Right.
It just kind of tailed in there, you know. So your mind kind of doesn't
Well,
process the fact that it's an unelected body of bureaucrats that now has the power to enter your property after 8 months of delinquency on your taxes. That's the bottom line. And unless they write some specific language to clarify that that is not the case, then it is the case.
But is that the ordinance, or not the ordinance, but the law already exists for this entry. And all the agreement does is it lets the RDA into the same activity. And what we're saying is that's very dangerous, because the way the law states now, an elected official, the county board, can do this, or somebody working for the county board. The county board doesn't, a county supervisor doesn't necessarily do it, but someone they appoint does it, and they represent the county. When the RDA does it, they don't represent anybody but themselves. They are a private organization. They are not even under the auspices of the city council.
One very, very important thing that we need to go back to also is the fact that they are only authorized to do that to determine the nature and extent of environmental pollution as defined in statute 299.0.
Can I follow?
Please.
So the resolution that grants the authority of the RDA to enter these properties would fall within the technical boundaries of the city of Racine. Is that correct?
True, but under the grant of authority from the county.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand the relationship here, because just a few minutes ago when we were talking about body cameras, we talked about dignity, privacy, search warrants. If we're going to go into a house to look for drugs, we don't just barge in there unless there's exigent circumstances. We get a warrant. And it seems to me that this really violates people's rights, even if they're tax delinquent. Giving them free hand to be able to go in to check for pollution and environmental standards seems to be far-reaching. I would say if we're going to authorize anything like this, they should at least get a warrant, even though they're not fulfilling their part of the law. We do that for criminals. Why wouldn't we do it for someone who maybe because of the economy can't pay their bill? I mean, I wouldn't want them, if I'm not able to pay my taxes and I go into a tax delinquent property, I don't want the RDA to come and say, oh, we're going to check for environmental and pollution in your property and come in my door when I'm home. You know, or it doesn't say that it's an abandoned property. It says any.
That was very good. Thank you, Henry.
Yeah.
and I think that really spelled it out there what the real problem is, because commercial and industrial is one thing, but when you're doing residential, that's a whole different thing. We're going to get into a little bit in just a minute here of how misleading the information was that went onto the floor.
Okay, we've got a couple of things that we want to clarify right in the middle of this discussion, and that is exactly how a tax certificate is issued,
And how it works.
and what the definition of in rem is, which is a term that the mayor is going to use.
Yes.
So, and you're up on this stuff, so go ahead. And,
All right. So first of all, let's look at how a tax certificate works. Your property taxes for the year come due at December 31st or January 1st of the following year. That's when they become due. The state gives you 8 months That's until August 31st of that year to pay those taxes. Now, the city of Racine gives you, there's a quarterly program, it actually gives you July 31st with no interest charges. But the state gives you 8 months. And if at the end of that 8 months, if you haven't got every penny of that tax bill paid, then on September 1st, the county treasurer is directed to issue a tax certificate. Now that's the word you got to remember, tax certificate. And it gets issued on September 1st unless everything is paid. So you may have been paying all the taxes during that year, those 8 months, and got all but $100 of it paid. A tax certificate issues. You're still living in the property, you still own the property, and it's yours. But under this new law, if that tax certificate is issued, now the county can come in and inspect it. Now, I want to carry it a little step further.
Well, wait a minute. They could, before this memorandum of understanding, they did have that right to do it.
The county's always had that right to do it. Right. Now
what we're concerned about is the county transferring that authority to the RDA.
To the RDA, which is an unelected body of people, and we've seen some of the things that they do, Machinery Row included. Now, the point is, once that tax certificate is issued, now you are safe on safe grounds from any type of foreclosure activity for 2 years. Now, that's 2 years from the date the certificate is issued. Now, if the county treasurer doesn't get issued on September 1st, it doesn't get it done on the 30th or in October, whatever it is, it's 2 years from the date the tax certificate is issued. At the end of that 2-year period, if you have that $100 paid off, guess what? Your tax certificate means nothing. And those people that haven't paid that off, sometimes another year comes up and another tax certificate is issued the following year. And so they have 2 years from that one to get that one paid off. But the first one is still outstanding, so that's only got a year left. So you better get that one paid off than the first one. But here's the point in all this type of stuff. While these tax certificates are getting issued, you still live in the properties. You're still subject to this investigation that Henry was concerned about, people coming to your house and going to look for environmental things. And that's what we're concerned about, is who gets to do that. But first understand how the certificate issues, because there's going to be some very bad information put out here in just a minute about when people can come in and go into that property. The law reads, the memorandum reads, that it's when the tax certificate is issued, long before the property has been foreclosed on. The property can't get foreclosed on for at least another 2 years. But the tax certificate issued is at that point, and at that point, your house can be invaded by whoever we're under that law. Right. All right? So just get that, because now comes the first bit of really bad information put out on the county floor.
And this is the mayor who starts.
Only those properties that are at issue here where the county already has this statutory authority. From time to time, the city and the county work together to determine if there's environmental resources that the city has to perhaps take into the in-rem process through the city a property. To do that, the current process now is property by property, the county board votes on it individually. So that's the current process that exists now. To make that process facilitate at a faster pace, what is before you would allow there to be an agreement between the county and the city that when properties are tax foreclosed upon.
Right there. He said in rem tax foreclosed properties.
Right.
And that is not the case. The county has it when tax certificates are issued, not when the property is foreclosed on. It's when the certificates are issued. And anything following that advice is working off of false data now, because the county, the aldermen are thinking, well, it's foreclosed on, so they come in and look for them. No, it's not foreclosed on. It's when the tax certificate is issued. Now, this little in rem thing, this is a virtually meaningless type of thing in the context of all this investigation stuff. In rem means simply that the defendant in the case is a thing. In other words, when the county forecloses on it, it's foreclosing. It's the defendant is a thing. It's a piece of property. It's not a person.
Or the title of the property.
If you're trying to foreclose on it, in rem means it's not a person. In personam means you're suing a person. So if somebody lives in Arizona and has property in the city of Racine, when the county treasurer forecloses, they don't have to go to Arizona to get it done, because they're not attacking the person, they're only attacking the property.
One thing I wanted to mention too, he says his opening remark is, it builds off current existing statutory law, as though that is some kind of solace.
Yeah,
well,
the law's already there, so don't worry about it.
Well, and yeah, because the existing law is fine, this just builds on it. Well, I'd like to point out that a cancerous tumor builds on an existing healthy body. You don't want cancerous tumors. We don't want this kind of legislation. We don't want this kind of power given to a non-elected body.
Correct.
So,
And when the city wants to investigate the possibility of environmental remediation, in those cases, instead of having to go back before the county board every time to review a property, in those circumstances, we would have a standing agreement that would allow the city, in conjunction with the county's already existing statutory authority, to do so.
See, here's the point. It bothers me is that at this point, the council will proceed through the discussion thinking that they're only discussing foreclosed properties.
mm-hmm.
And that's just not the case.
It's not the case. And the other thing is the county, he said it takes, meetings, and it's about 4 weeks, well, or different meetings. It takes too long. No, it doesn't. The county goes through a procedure that, will look at what they're actually doing as an elected official, where you have some access to that representative. RDA will not. They can just do whatever they want. They close the meeting, we're in closed session. Sorry, you can't hear anything.
Well, a lot of what I'm hearing from, and QA is coming up too, the mayor and QA and others is, trust us, we would never do that. We would never violate your rights. The standard procedure for doing this is so benign, so insignificant, and they're going to explain how, in their mind, this property is already taken away from the rightful owners because they were delinquent on their taxes and they no longer have any rights, and that's the only situation where this memorandum of understanding is going to empower the RDA. Well, if that's the fact, then put it in the language.
Kind of got off into residential, but let me just say this. When it comes to residential situations, and before the county takes over, once the tax delinquent properties have been sent to the county, the treasurer's office does everything that can possibly be done to let you pay it off. Set up payment arrangements with you, the whole 9 yards. But yeah, there's a penalty involved. But if you take care of your business with the arrangements, get it taken care of, you can keep your property. But if that tax certificate comes in, which lots of times it is beyond 3 years, then you're evicted by the sheriff.
See, now there's some more misinformation.
Yeah.
The tax certificate gets issued immediately. The county treasurer does not go through a discussion with you, helping you get caught up in things until it's been delinquent, until that August 31st date comes in, and then the tax certificate gets issued. Then the discussion starts.
Right.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with foreclosure.
Yeah, and it happens way before 3 years. It happens the next day.
This is the finance. This is the head of finance committee in the county, in the city of Racine. This guy.
and this just builds on the misinformation of the mayor. He gets into really descriptive here in just a minute about how it doesn't make any difference at this point whether the RDA goes in there or not, because
nobody's there.
Yeah,
it's already been taken. It's not your property anymore. It's ours.
The property is sold at auction. And, whoever, if it's the bank that's involved, if it's the county involved, the lien holder on the property, the person that have been in delinquent and lost their property, they're out of there. So ain't nobody, if it's talking about real estate, home owners, it's got nothing to do with this. But since we were talking about it, you can be evicted by the sheriff, auction, can be sold. But the thing about this here, we should support this as it is, but I have no problem putting an amendment in there, but we need to move this through. Why? Because we make it very difficult for business to come here.
And that bothers me when data like that is put out on the floor, and if the aldermen believe that, and which I don't know, if they don't know anything about it, why not believe it? He sounds authoritative. He's agreeing with what the mayor said. They are operating with extremely bad data. No,
Well, here's the thing, George. Where's the city attorney? Why doesn't he step up and say, Alderman Shakur, I believe you're incorrect. This is really the procedure. And why didn't he explain it the way we're explaining it?
I think he probably likes people to be misinformed.
I think
as
he
long
does.
as it's
I think
to his
he's a-
I think they want to get this thing through, and
Right.
somebody's willing to say something
Right.
like that so that everybody votes for it.
Is that the attorney that the city of Racine needs? Really? Is that an attorney that the city of Racine really needs to?
No, I've said before, and I'll say it again, I wish he'd leave and we'd get a different attorney, somebody that's
Absolutely.
qualified to
And why
handle
is
it.
Corey Mason, you can just see that these two work together now. Now they're working together. You can just see it. One, bounces the ball back to the other one. And that's what's happening here. These aldermen, hell of them don't even know what they're talking about. Most of them sat there with no idea what's even going on here.
Well, we saw what
Including-
happened like a couple of months ago where they abdicated all their responsibility and all their authority. They just
So it really doesn't
gave
matter.
it up.
What you have here is you've got, when the mayor supported this or actually introduced this into the Common Council. So here's my thing. Obviously they're aware of what they were doing when they did it, why add homeowners? Why add residential property? They knew it. They knew what they were doing. It's not something that, by mistake, we didn't understand, that the city attorney didn't understand. They knew that they were bringing in residential property. Okay, now they're going to talk about what the changes were. Now there was enough discussion here where they said we're going to talk about removing the residential properties from this
Perhaps
memorandum.
your goal can be accomplished not by amending the agreement, but by directing that the action of council only permit the RDA to seek access to non-residential properties.
Is that an acceptable description of your intent?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Is there a second from Alder Shakur?
I want to know, where exactly does this language appear? They're talking about not doing an amendment to the Memorandum of Understanding, but to just make a statement, and where does that statement go?
And that's exactly the problem, because this resolution, where any real property can go into it, as well as Exhibit A, which is the application for the redevelopment authority to come in and inspect any real property.
Once again, for environmental pollution.
Right. But that's what's in writing. It's all there. Where is this, 20 years from now, this is going to be easily found. This is going to be on the record. Mm-hmm. Where is this thing about limiting the RDA and saying it can't come in on residential property? I'll tell you where it is. It's in the minutes of this meeting.
Yeah.
And where is that?
Yeah.
The minutes of this meeting are going to be on, if you know to go to the website and you pull up the minutes, you can find it, but that's not nearly as visible as the resolution or the city or the
Memorandum of Understanding.
Memorandum or the state law. All that stuff is right there, and this Memorandum of Understanding includes the application to how you apply for it, how they grant permission.
And it doesn't say anything on that application that it's a home, a factory, or a commercial building. None of that. So you fill it out. It's so such an address. Okay, well, we'll let her go. The county doesn't care. Here it is.
That's how corruption occurs.
Well, that's
corruption
right.
means a decay, and if they promise that this is not going to be residential properties, where is that promise? So the process is described in, like you said, in the minutes of the meeting, but the system will decay over time because it's never
10, 20 years from now, when the state law is still there and the resolution is still there, the minutes of this meeting are forgotten. None of the aldermen are there anymore. I mean, someone could be, if they remember it, that's great.
Right.
But unless, when it's just on the side like that, it's very, very risky. That's all I'm thinking.
It's a power grab.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're still doing some research on the redeployment of city employees who have been freed up by changes in the waste pickup system. They were predicted to be used in street repairs, but the number of employees that are doing street repairs has in fact gone down. And street repairs are falling way behind. So we're still doing some research on that. Where the heck are these redeployed city employees? Where are they? If they're not doing street repairs, where did they go? I mean, was the classification of a city employee just transferred over to the now 5 or 6 employees that the mayor has in his office?
It could be.
Maybe that's where the money went. Maybe that's where the idea of city
that's the key.
employees went.
Follow the money. Don't look for the employees. Follow
Right.
the money. And you
Yeah.
know where the money's going? It's going to the top.
Well, we know it hasn't gone to street repairs, so
No,
we're
it's
still
not that
investigating that. We're still ferreting that out to find out just exactly where the heck these employees have been redeployed. We also we know that there has been a records request made on the Tim Tompkins settlement,
Correct.
which for everything that we know, it was in the neighborhood of $250,000, give or take some money, tens of thousands of dollars. It could be, but over $200,000. A record request has been made. That still has not been received. The Tyrese West shooting. There's still a question. It'll be 2 months on Thursday, 2 months. And the question has still not been resolved. Was the officer that shot and killed Tyrese West wearing a body cam? And is there any information on that body cam? If it exists, where is it? That has been mum. They have not responded to any request for information on that. So keep that in mind.
The whole body cam issue, I think, is just finally coming to the front. And I think there's some real promise in it if they use the body cams right. If they're going to start getting real defensive and consider them spying on the police, I think you're going to find out they're going to have a minimal value, but they'll still have some value. But
Well, we haven't seen a protocol yet that designates that these things should be on full time.
No, neither the sheriffs nor the city of Racine has said that.
Now,
at
the City
all.
of Racine, we just received the City of Racine body cam policy. We're going to review that, and hopefully I can get some special guests on here to talk about body cams and a little bit depth of Racine County's body cams, multiple policies within Racine County.
Yes, so come back and see us again next week because, we've got these other issues that we just previewed and there's going to be more coming up during the week. Believe me. So once again, thanks for being here. We hope to see you again next week. Thank you.